The FBI is lying to you about what happened with the Charlie Kirk assassination. That is a fact and not an opinion, and I'll prove it today with evidence. And you probably already guessed that this was true, but you might not know the exact details that you are being lied about, and that's what I'm going to cover today. All right. Now, to start off, I'll mention that I do have more authority than most people to talk about the topic. All right. Not the most authority or the highest, but certainly more than most. I've been on several combat deployments. I know how people tend to die from gunshot wounds firsthand. I've also been trained in things like weaponry and I know how assassinations work. And I also know the institutional corruption that does exist in big areas of the government and how it shows up and where it shows up. But besides the military, what a lot of people don't know is that I also worked with the medical examiner in one of the most violent cities in the United States for a few years. That means I've been to hundreds of crime scenes where people have been killed in various different ways. It's interesting when you see a lot of that stuff and you experience a lot of that stuff. Um, what you thought prior to those experiences about what might happen to a human body or what might happen in these scenarios, you find out isn't exactly true, right? There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of things that we'll say civilians believe, and it seems like common sense until you get into that arena of forensics and understanding how these things work. And you realize that what you thought was common sense isn't necessarily common. Okay. Because there's just information that you're not aware of until you start seeing a lot of these different things. So, a lot of what is common wisdom about guns or shootings or violent crimes or any of these things, common wisdom on the internet, a lot of that stuff isn't really true, or it's not the way that you think. And you realize how unpredictable in some ways the human body can be when faced with trauma and stuff like that. You have people dying from like things that you would think wouldn't kill somebody, and then you have other situations where you're like, wow, that should kill a person, and the person still lives, and you see all these different things. So I'm going to break all that stuff down. It makes sense when you're understanding the science, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to the lay person. So I'm going to hopefully be able to make some things make sense to you here today that's listening. Now, for those of you who know me, though, you know that this is not what I do primarily. You know me as a game coach. Okay. I teach men to win, both with inner game, which is your mental health, mindset, confidence, as well as your outer game, which is the real world skills that lead to having better outcomes in dating and stronger relationships. So that's what I do. And I'll be getting back to that. Don't worry. This will probably be the last I talk about this incident. But it does lead to the question, so why have I been talking about this stuff lately since the Charlie Kirk incident and since everything happened? Well, here's the thing, guys. All right. If you want to master inner and outer game, you have to have frame. All right. That means unplugging from false social conditioning and social messaging that is not necessarily true all the time and that isn't designed to serve you. And you need to be able to unplug from those things and discover who you are and discover what you want out of life, independent of those things, and start developing your own ideas. But if you're constantly being lied to by government leaders, community leaders, law enforcement, companies, marketing campaigns, media, and anyone else with an agenda, how do you know what is true and what isn't so you can develop your own ideas and get what you want out of life, right? So being able to see some of the truth from the lies, being able to analyze this stuff with a critical mind. That's a skill set you're really going to need if you want good outcomes in life. That includes financial outcomes, family, life outcomes, and especially in my arena of dating and relationships, you need to be able to challenge narratives. Okay. So now I'm not saying to become some crazy conspiracy nut. I'm very anti conspiratorial in that sense, because I think a lot of people get a little bit crazy and they start making big logical leaps without evidence when they start getting conspiratorial. But I understand why people do it, because when you're living in this now in 2025, you're living in this simulation through technology instead of real life, where you're making real connections, real relationships, real friends, going outside, experiencing life, right? Away from the screen. What you have now is a deeper and further simulation of life that people are living. All right. And with that, a lot of lies and deceptions to take your money, take your labor, and get things from you. All right. So any internet marketing campaign is designed to have you part from cash in your wallet for whatever they're selling. You know what I mean? This is just how it works. And certainly when we look at big events like this, like the Charlie Kirk assassination, and how political it's become, you have all kinds of agendas now with different self-serving purposes involved in a narrative. The media doesn't report the facts anymore. What they do is they promote a narrative, and then they present evidence to support their narrative. What in that narrative is a combination of what they think is going to get them the clicks, the views, the likes, and it's also what fits their own personal ideologies, perhaps, right? And the things that they're promoting. So everybody is now giving you your information through a filter. You need to learn how to develop your own filter from that stuff, especially if you're like my clients, who are men, mostly men, trying to navigate the world and build a good life for themselves. You have to be able to figure out some of this crap, right? And so you got to question the crap, and you got to separate yourself from the crap if you expect to build a life the way that you want. And that's the main lesson here. You're going to see how you're being lied to for whatever reason that is. I mean, I have some speculation, but I don't know 100% why it's so important to lie about some of these details, right? If I had, we don't know, but I do know for a fact that we are being lied to. You are being lied to. All right, so that is the case. I'll plug my school community now so that I cannot plug things for the rest of the video, but I do have a community. It's for free. It's designed to help men have a stronger, positive masculine identity. It's designed for you guys to be able to help yourself in relationships, dating, your outer game skills, as well as your inner game skills, your mental health, your psychology, so you can make real connections with people in real life, right? Not just have a simulated life and getting sucked into the simulated life of internet arguments and politics and craziness that's out there. All right. Anyway, that's what the community is about. And I help guys a lot out there. We're 700 and some people strong in a private community, moving to 1,000 pretty quickly. So get on there. It's free for now. Okay. And there's courses in there that are free as well that can help you develop breaking attachments and handling breakups, loss, death, stuff like that. I have a whole course on that that's designed to help you, as well as some stuff for accountability, so you can start tracking things in your own life, doing better. All that stuff's for free. It's in the community, links in the description. And of course, I fight against algorithmic problems. So any support of the channel is also helpful. The like, the subscribe, all that stuff. Okay, cool. Now on to the lies. All right. If you got questions, or if you have ideas or conspiracies, go ahead and put them in the chat. I might not be able to address all of them. I don't know how popular this stream is going to be, but go ahead and put in the chat. If you're watching this later, throw in the comments. I'm interested to hear what you guys think, even if it's crazy. All right. And if I may be able to address some of those live on stream. Any super chat or anything like that helps me to notice your question, but you don't have to do that, obviously, to get a question answered. I'll try to get to your supers periodically through the stream. All right, man, I got a lot of info to go through. So first things first, the FBI comes out right after the shooting. Kash Patel does a statement, and he's like, we got him. All right, of course. So usually like the media is tr- jumping to conclusions and dropping the balls because they're trying to get first to the story. Well, now government organizations have adopted that policy over time, for whatever that reason is. And I don't know if it's this an administration thing or if it's just something that's been developing over time. But yeah, now it seems like law enforcement in these incidences or any government agency that needs to make statements, they rush to make a statement to present a narrative of some sort, to get the public to like be like, we don't have attention span anymore. Like we, as the public, we don't want to give it a few days for an investigation to happen and the truth to come out. Right. And for them to align their statements. So there's this rush to get statements out. So in this anyway, so then you end up with a lot of lies that way and a lot of things that aren't true, which is why in these incidences, and we're even still at that point with Charlie Kirk, it's like anything I say could change in a week. You got to give it a few weeks for the truth to come out because a lot of lies are going to come out right in the beginning. Anytime something like this happens, whether it's a school shooting, assassination attempt, anything like this that gets a lot of media attention, you're going to get lies mixed with truth in the beginning always because of people jumping to conclusion and rushing to try to get a story out to include law enforcement. All right. And the other thing, and I'll mention this more at the end, is that law enforcement lies to you. That is, they don't have a duty or obligation to tell you the truth. I know it sounds crazy, but they don't feel like they do, especially the FBI. The FBI is a federal law enforcement agency that has become an arm of the federal government that is sort of run by or aligned with whoever is running the federal government at the time. So right now it happens to be Trump administration and conservatives. Years ago it was Democrats, right? And then you had all kinds of foul play with the FBI, with the Democrats. And arguably there's foul play here because I don't see an Epstein list, do you, with the Republicans. So it's not a partisan thing. It's just that the FBI is not promoting truth and not enforcing the law as much as they are promoting and supporting a political ideology, which is based on who's appointed in leadership positions and who is running the government at the time. All right. So that's what the FBI has become. Unfortunately, it's not this unbiased organization. So that needs to change from within that organization. And I don't know how to do that. All right. I don't propose to know. But that's something that is real. And then law enforcement, and this includes military with things like secret or top secret clearances, we don't tell you the truth. We present you a narrative. We present you a story. And then we do that in the name of national security for military. If we think that there's a national security risk, we're going to lie to you. If we have selfish reasons for lying to you and we want to argue it's a national security risk, we're going to lie to you. Okay. So being lied to as the public is part of our policy. We are not as bad at propagandizing. Some countries are really bad at propaganda. Like they just are running crazy propaganda. We're not North Korea. Okay. But we do this. We do propagandize. If you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you, man. You're not living in the world. All right. Now, we try to have some oversight with the DOJ and some of these things to prevent lies from getting out of control. But the problem is that oversight is usually behind closed doors. And so things can get out of hand very, very quickly. And this is how things get covered up. This is how things get lied about. All right. And I'm not saying you can tell me your theories. People like to just throw convenient theories out there. I don't think necessarily it's this organized cabal. I think it's just selfish interests and it's more chaos. But those selfish interests and those interests of serving themselves first end up leading to deception, end up leading to you being lied to, all kinds of stuff that happens. And they do it. They don't have to. You wouldn't need a security clearance if you got to know everything. You don't understand? See what I'm saying? If you get to know everything and in full transparency as a civilian, then there wouldn't be such a thing as a security clearance. Everything would be open source, but it's not, right? So we are deceiving you. Well, I say we, but the government is part of the job, is to deceive you for your own safety or security. Agree or disagree with it, that is the case, and you need to accept that. Law enforcement does it in the name of protecting an investigation. So law enforcement historically, whether it's locals down to the Fed, will report false reports sometimes, or leave out information, or leave out pertinent details for the sake of the investigation. And I'm not even faulting, by the way, these things. I'm not faulting needing a security clearance and protecting national security. I think it's kind of important. I'm not faulting law enforcement for protecting an investigation, but I think a lack of oversight does cause things to get out of hand. And so that's what you are looking at here potentially. So anyway, that's that on that. Let's talk about the lies now more so. We'll jump into my share screen, and let's do this. Cool. All right. What do I look like? That's fun. Okay. So we got this. Is that the one I want to do? What do you guys think? Do I want to do that, or do I want to do that? No, I don't like that as much. Let's go back to not that one. Let's go back to, where did it go? This one. Well, that's kind of cool, I guess. Huh. Anyway, about that. No, that's not good. I don't know how to go back to the old thing. All right, we'll do this one. All right, sweet. All right, so guys, those who are fans of me know how bad I am with pressing buttons. Okay, cool. We got the first statement, the subject for the horrific shooting. This is Kash Patel. When it was like hours after the incident. So they reported they got the guy, and then it was this guy. You guys remember that? So it was this old guy. So that was the first lie or misreporting in this case. All right. But here's the interesting thing. Okay. So like this guy was an old guy who had a pellet gun in a parking lot. So this is Utah. No, Utah. Not sorry, not whatever. But this is not Utah, but wherever the fuck it is. It's places where people have guns. Okay. So like I'm sorry, hold on here. Yeah, so this guy having a pellet gun isn't that's not like an unheard of thing. Having a gun in a car, that's about, so why was he targeted? Well, as it turns out, this guy was yelling that he was the shooter to allow the actual suspect to flee, according to Michael Smith from the Utah. Yeah, it was Utah. I'm sorry. I don't know why I brain farted there. Utah County Sheriff's Department. So this guy was a ruse to allow the suspect to flee. So that's interesting because that didn't come out at first, right? Like, and that's pretty crazy when you think about it. Not only did they get the wrong guy, but the story is not even like more is coming out. Like, why did they get this guy? That wasn't reported at first. Now it's because he was yelling, "I'm the shooter," you know? So he was yelling, apparently, "It's me, I'm the shooter." And then the cops rolled him up. All right. So think about how crazy that is already. So we're not off to a good start. It points to a lot of things. Is law enforcement trying to pin the finger on anybody to start off with without checking on the evidence? Like, what's going on here? And then if this guy is trying to take credit for the shooting to allow the shooter to get away, kind of brings up a question, which is who knew about this assassination attempt? Did this guy know that there was an attempt in the works? And so he put a pellet gun in his car to avoid a federal firearm charge, but add to the potential evidence to stop up the police. When the police find a gun before examining it, they handcuff the guy, they roll him up, they get him into questioning, they examine the gun, they see it's not real, then they start to ask questions. And then that time elapses, allowing the shooter to get away. That sounds like a premeditated thing, but nobody's talking about that. So that's already off to a bad start. Like, why is this guy just happened to have a pellet gun in the car? and then happened to go, you know what I'm going to do is a good idea right now is take credit for this incident to allow this guy to get away because I'm so excited about it? Was it a spontaneous decision on this guy's part and law enforcement just reacted? Possible, but that doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? It sounds like maybe people knew this was going to go down. Maybe people in Reddit and internet forums and some of these fringe extreme groups had heard about something happening, that there had been talk about something happening. And maybe this guy was a little bit more prepared than we realize. And then it kind of brings the question of why is that? And then, of course, why are there no statements about that? So already we have some deception happening, right, from the get-go. Okay. So that's what we have. We have that going on. All right. So then within a few hours, they report we found the weapon. Okay. So we found the weapon, and we'll go back to my share screen. And what did they find? All right. They found this. Okay. So this is the weapon. This is a Mauser style or Mauser. I don't know if it's a Mauser, just Mauser style, because it's hard to tell from the photo. 30-06 bolt action rifle, supposedly found in the woods nearby. Now, take a look at this photo. What do you notice about this photo? So, if your first thought, if those of you guys who have hunted before or who've gone shooting before, what do you notice about the scope? Looks like it's set pretty far back now, doesn't it? Like, I'm not so sure who's using that eye relief. It seems like nobody who's going to shoot this thing is going to mount that scope that way. Maybe a 5-year-old. Now, it's not impossible. All right. I'm not saying it's physically impossible. A 200-yard shot, and this will dispel this myth, a 200-yard shot that's straight on, not going through vegetation, not going through obstacles. It's a very easy shot to do. The average guy in the military does a 200-yard shot as part of his qualification course. And I'm saying average, not a sniper. An average guy with an AR-15 rifle with a non-magnified scope like a CCO or iron sights can do a 200-round shot on a pop-up target. Okay, so it's not an impossible shot to do. If you have a scope and magnification, it's really easy to do. You don't have to account for much. So the shot was not difficult. All right. So people who think that the shot was difficult, they don't shoot very often. All right, or they don't understand how shooting works. So that's a thing. Easy shot to make if he is indeed the shooter, but it just looks a little weird with that scope mount. It looks like it's, I don't know. It doesn't look like it's going to hit or that somebody, where's his eye going? I don't know. So it seems, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, this is not where you would normally mount a scope, but that's not, saying solidly that this guy's not the shooter. But so let's just accept that you could shoot this weapon 200 yards. Not a big deal. The real problem we run into is a Mauser is not like an AR-15. You can't just field strip it in 2 seconds and throw it in a bag and run out. Okay. It requires a tool to break this down, and it requires a little bit of time, more time than a shot ringing out and this dude being reported running across the rooftop and then exiting the scene. So the dude was exiting the scene almost immediately from the rooftop, yet, there's no rifle that is to be seen anywhere doing this exit. This rifle is about a 44-inch rifle. All right. So with a scope mounted on top, mind you. So, and then this particular weapon was found in the woods with 30-06 rounds with writing on it. And the writing had like Antifa style writing and stuff like that. So if we're buying that story, that means that this dude broke down this rifle like faster than the speed of a human being, put it in something, escaped from the scene, reassembled the rifle, and then placed it in the woods. It doesn't really make sense. And the FBI is not accounting for this. And we'll get into the footage in the photos, and you'll see that this dude is exiting the scene. He doesn't have a rifle. So this, I'm not saying he wasn't the shooter, but where's this rifle? Is this even the rifle that was used for the event? So far, it's there's a lot of missing information, which means you're being lied to. I don't know why we're being lied to, but we're being lied to. Okay. That's what's going on here. All right. So, um, oh, where did I go? What's going on there? Why does that look like crap? Hold on. Stop sharing this. What's going on with my screen? My screen looks crazy. To me. All right. Hold on here. I'm gonna. All right. I don't know what's going on with my. I don't know what's going on with my screen there. Let me go back to the share screen. Let's go back to here. Let's go back to share. Oh, let's go back to there. Let's go here. Man, I look like do I look weird to you guys? Because in my StreamYard, I have like this little small screen. I don't know if I look okay. No, I look normal. I'm sorry. It's StreamYard is doing weird stuff for me. Okay, let's go back. All right, so let's go back to this. And all right, so we got the sorry for all the interruptions here. It's just weird. All of a sudden, I'm doing this stream. It's not conspiracy, but anyway. So here's the dude fleeing. Here's the still photos of this guy, right? So as you can see, okay, both these photos, and I'll show the footage of him leaving the roof. I'll show the footage of him running. He's bent knees here. You can see an iPhone or something, some sort of phone in his pocket on the his right hand side of the jeans there. Um, which mean, but there's no rifle, there's no scope shoved up his jeans anywhere. His bag is not big enough to conceal a 44-inch rifle, unless that rifle was broken down, maybe. In which case, I don't see that he had the ability to do that. So we'll continue here. Let's go into this one. Okay, we're going to share this. Okay. So this is the FBI footage. We'll watch this dude real quick. All right. We see him running. You can follow my things from running over here immediately after the shot. He's going to show up. He runs. There he is. You see him running. All right. And we'll pause this. We'll zoom in. Okay. I don't see, it's hard to tell, but you don't see a rifle. Where do you see a rifle there? You guys see one? Okay. We'll pause it, come back, and you can go review this footage for yourself. He's coming off the rooftop. He has a bag. There's his bag. He sets the bag down. Do you guys see a rifle here? Okay. He drops nearly a full story, knees bent, land. I'm not seeing a rifle. Do you guys see a rifle? Am I crazy, or is the FBI full of shit? There is no rifle there. Okay. So that is that footage. We see no rifle. All right. I don't know. And you can let's watch this a little bit further. He runs all the way across. Watch it one more time. Okay. So where's the rifle? Which means that, the rifle was, let's see, his leg bends there. So it's not stuffed in his pants, because he wouldn't be able to bend his legs. He wouldn't be able to run like that with a rifle stuffed in his jeans. Okay. Because that's some of the theories that are out there. All right. So no rifle. Okay. Oh, there we go. Now I look normal. So no rifle on the exit. Where is this rifle? Where is this magical rifle? This 30-06 that he fled the scene with? It's either he left it at the scene, which the FBI is not reporting, which means that's a lie. Okay. Or he fled with the rifle and managed to stash it in the woods, but we don't see that either, you see. So let's look at this TMZ footage real quick, show more footage here. So share the screen. We're going to now move to the TMZ footage. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So now we're moving to this footage. This is him walking across now. And got to excuse TMCs and all. TMZ has a bunch of ads on their stuff, but okay. So look at him. He's got a limp from falling down, but I don't know. I don't think he's got a rifle stuffed in his pants. You know, from everything that we're seeing, I'm really not seeing it. Where's that rifle? Okay. So yeah. So that's what we got so far is where's this weapon? All right. There's something wrong. All right. With the story. Now, what does this mean? Either the gun was left on the rooftop, which means the FBI lied about the Mauser they found in the woods being the murder weapon, which then also calls to questions. Then the rounds that were found with the Antifa slogans on them. So was that all a lie? Were the rounds a lie? Was the weapon a lie? What's going on here, right? Or maybe he wasn't the shooter. I'm not making that claim. It's a little strange. A guy is running off of a rooftop and escaping after a shot's fired. So there's that. But what's going on with the story? What does that mean? Is he taking a fall for somebody? I don't know. This is where we get into conspiracies, but I don't have any evidence to point to a particular conspiracy, really. But I am showing that you're being lied to by the FBI in these details. There's something wrong with them. Okay. And we're left to speculate for what that is. Okay. So let's talk about now the shot that was fired. All right. So let's look at the shot. Some people are talking about exit wound, lack of exit wound. Here's where I'm going to educate you a little bit. Or even a lot of respectable channels, I think you're getting this thing wrong with the exit wound. So I'll share my screen again and let's go into, okay. So when we look at exit wounds, all right, we look at papers like the varying size of exit wounds from centerfire rifles as a consequence of temporary activity. All right. And some of these studies, peer-reviewed forensic literature notes that exit wound size is not a reliable indicator of caliber, which means sometimes large calibers leave small exits, and small calibers can sometimes leave large ones, depending on the energy dissipated in the tissue involvement. The skin, to try to explain this from a forensic thing, the skin separates from the tissue. It's like jello, like a blanket over your body almost, right? Okay, it's not, and it's like that skin displaces a certain way, and you could have an exit wound that's small, even though the inside is a large wound cavity. All right, that can happen all the time, even with large calibers. You could have a barely noticeable exit wound. So when we go to crime scenes and stuff, two common things. One is detectives often miss exit wounds. They'll count up where shots are and they'll miss some because they didn't see an exit or entrance wound even from multiple like shots in a body. They often miss them because they're sometimes so small. Okay. And that's even larger caliber rounds. So the average like military guy, military experience using like a 5.56, all right, military grade ammo, whatever, is used to, if they've seen somebody or shot somebody with one of those, usually what goes in 5.56 will go in and leaves a large wound cavity on the way out if there's an exit at all. The hope is it stays in the body, does more damage, creates more hydrostatic shock. But if it exits, it's usually a larger thing. And we can see on ballistic gel testing, a lot of times that is the case where the exit comes out, leaves a larger wound on the exit. This is especially true if the bullet is cutting through harder tissue like bone and, stuff like that. But when we're looking at this shooting, the shooting hit him in the neck, and it probably missed his spinal column, basically cut through the jugular and caused him to die very quickly by bleeding out and the shock from the bullet, hitting him and stuff, right? So, like, an average person, Charlie Kirk was a tall guy, 6'4", 6'5", something like that, but even he's not a buff, big dude, right? Like, my neck is like 21 inches around, but his neck was probably more like 16 inches around, maybe 17. But in a 16 to 17-inch neck, you're looking at a diameter of only 5 inches. So it's not the same as when they do gel testing on a thick gel that you're going to see on YouTube. It's a thin amount. It's only 5 inches. Go ahead and search for someone doing gel testing on only 5 inches. You're not going to find it. All right. So this is part of the thing where you got to analyze the evidence a little differently. So you got about a 5 inches or so on the average neck diameter. All right. Away from the spinal column to the side of the neck, you're dealing with less than 3 inches, maybe 2 to 3 inches that it actually pierces through, goes in on the other side. A fast moving large rifle round can cut right through that tissue like whoosh, like a knife almost, just slice right through it, not leaving a large exit wound. Okay, that is a possibility that's written up in the literature. And forensic practitioners and trauma surgeons, they often apply this unreliable rule of thumb that the exit is usually larger than the corresponding entrance, but medical examiners are warned that that is not always the case, that you really have to look into the wound, not just assume the larger of the two is where the entrance or where the exit is. Okay, because there's a large enough number of exceptions where the exit wound's actually smaller or small, and it doesn't really reflect the caliber. Okay, so that's what's going on. So here's a picture. Now in this study, they use 5.56, which is not 30-06, but even as such, 5.56 tends to leave large exit wounds because of the tumbling effect of the round in the body. But these are 3 different shots. You can see Exhibit A here, very, very small slit-like exit because of the way the skin displaced around the wound. So if you're looking on a body, you might even miss this if you're a detective. You see what I mean? Then there's more of a medium size exit. And then here's a large part B is a larger exit. So these are all different shots into, it was like pigskin over ballistic gel to show and demonstrate what the skin does around an object. Okay. So that's the forensic stuff. And as you can see, you're getting all different results when the skin is displaced a certain way. All right. And you see that in actual murder scenes. You see that in combat as well, right? If you've seen enough people who've been shot, a couple people, you're only going to have, this is the problem with like military experiences. You might only, you're not, as a military guy, I'll tell you, you're not looking at exit wounds. You're not a forensic guy. You're just fucking there. You know what I mean? Doing combat shit, and you roll on to the next thing. Like, you do battle damage assessment, but nobody's assessing an exit wound. You just sort of, you never really think about it. You know what I mean? It's not something that you really think about in that situation. And even if you have a fair amount of combat experience, it's not like you've been through 1,000 shootings or something on a deployment or two. You've been through a few, maybe. Okay. And most soldiers who go on deployments never get in a gunfight. That's the truth. No disrespect. It just is what it is. Or they've never seen that. But for those that do, you're not seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. You're seeing a couple. All right. You're seeing a few. All right. And so that's not a good test sample to tell you what's going on. You got to look at the data. You got to look at the evidence. So here's some more evidence here. The varying size of exit wounds from centerfire rifles as consequence of temporary activity. All right. So this is demonstrating an entrance here from 2 to 3 inches or like 7.5 centimeters. Look how small the cavity is. It's pretty much straight on. So the bullet pierces straight on, and then it starts to tumble and do stuff, creating a large cavity. And then on the way out, it can be smaller. So even through the body, that round could go in flip around, tear up tissue, exit with less force than it entered, leaving a small exit wound. All right, so you see that there if it were to come out at 30 centimeters. If you're slicing through the side of a neck, though, the bullet doesn't have enough tissue to go through to create this large exit. See, if the bullet exit the body at like a 16 centimeter, look how large that exit wound would be. It would be like blowing out the back end, which is what people think when they think exit wounds. But it's not always. Something going through the neck without running into obstructions like bone and stuff like that, only 2 to 3 inches, very, very plausible. It slices right through, and you're not going to be able to tell necessarily whether the shot came from the back or the front without further investigation on the medical examiner's table. You're not going to be able to tell just by looking at the outside or from a media report. So I'm saying this because there's a lot of people saying, well, we got shot from the other side, and that the front is the exit wound, or he got shot from somebody else, different angle or whatever. Not necessarily. Okay. And I got people out there going, where's this exit wound in this lot? Not necessarily. If you understand what I'm telling you here, oftentimes exit wounds are not the reliable thing. Okay. Oftentimes exit wounds are larger. We could say usually an exit wound, depending on the round, right, is larger on the exit than it is on the entrance, but not always, not reliably. So that's something that's kind of important here to mention, because that's a conspiracy. I don't know that anybody is lying to you about that. Okay. And so I don't know that that's not necessarily, that should add to your bucket of evidence. The exit wound thing isn't really a big thing. Plus, here's another thing too, but where's the reports? Was he wearing a vest or not wearing a vest? Now, because of YouTube, I'm not going to show the footage of him actually getting shot. It's all over the internet, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of the channel and the video. Okay. I think this is a good video, important for people to hear. And I know the algorithms are not friendly to me, and they're going to be less friendly to me if I show clips or screenshots of a murder. So I'm just going to leave those photos out for this stream. You can look them up. But there's some like places where he's sitting where it looks like he has a vest on, and then some where it looks like he's not. And then we don't know the timeline of those photos. So that's an unanswered question. Did he have a vest or not? Where's the statements from his security team? Where are the statements from law enforcement, FBI, about whether or not he was wearing a vest? What type of vest was he wearing? Why don't we know this information? You see, it's this kind of stuff that gets left out, which leaves you wondering and asking questions. And then you got, of course, where's this weapon? So all kinds of potential, like all kinds of shady stuff going on, right? And you would think that from a public relations standpoint, that the FBI would do a better due diligence at wanting to squash rumors and tell a better story. If there is a conspiracy, you would think they would do a better job at covering it up. All right. So that's why I don't necessarily think that there's some crazy conspiracy here, because I would hope the cover up would be better if they gotten that lazy, is what I think. But there's clearly missing pieces here. There's clearly things we're being lied to. So let's go more into some more stuff here. So we got this exit wound stuff. Okay, so vests. Now, what kind of vest was he wearing? This is where it gets, you have these low profile vests. Now, it's reported that Charlie Kirk always wore a vest. I've heard that. I've heard that he preferred like something like a low signature, like low profile kind of vest, just more comfortable, looks better, whatever. There's some that's saying you could see like details of his chest and stuff. Well, look, if you look at like a vest like this, I don't know what this guy's doing. Is he putting a plate in or what? You might be able to see side details, right? Some side boob or whatever, and have a center plate with the way some of these designs are. These are not like some of these aftermarket civilian made level 3 armor vests are not really something I would want to use in combat. Like they're not You know what I mean? They're really more for feeling secure than actually being secure, covering maybe such a small space of the chest. But if it's covering a small space of the chest designed to look like you're not wearing anything, you know what I mean? That could be deceptive. And most likely he had a vest on. I'm going to go with he had a vest on based on some of the other photos, even though it looks like he's not wearing a vest, and maybe even see some nippleage in some other photos. But what we don't have is a timeline. Did he put a vest on later? Whatever. You know what I mean? People are reporting like he just got into it, but I mean, we really don't know that. When were photos taken? Like, right? So who knows? Also, there could be details like, all right, so example, this is not necessarily the vest I think he wore on the right here, the black one, but notice there's these little like looks like Molly thing attachment or something on this vest that could look like a nipple. You know what I'm saying? Like you could have, and I don't know that these are styles of vests. They haven't reported, but you could have a style of vest with something like this or some feature or, piece of cloth or whatever in the vest that makes it look like with a t-shirt on that you got nipples and from your nipples and not the vest. It could look like that possibly. It looks too much like he's wearing a vest when he's sitting in some of those photos and some of the side profiles for me to think he's not. Plus, it does appear that the round may be ricocheted off the vest into the neck, exited out the neck. All right, so that looks like all the possibilities there. I don't know anything more than that because the FBI is not being clear. And then there's details about the shooter, like his family, his relationships. This becomes pertinent to me in what I do because I make a claim, and I think this is a true claim when at least we look at the vast majority of shooters lately, okay, is that these are men that probably have predisposed to mental illness, who the common theme stretching across most of these shooters is a lack of healthy social relationships and a lack of healthy romantic options and romantic relationships. This is the sort of red pilling thing that a lot of the normies don't like to hear, but it's true, is that guys without sexual options often get violent. We see this in polyamorous societies like in Afghanistan, where, yeah, according to Sharia law, you can have up to 3 wives, and only the guys with the most resources get all the women. So then you have a large cohort of men in Afghanistan who have no women, right? No options. What do those men do? Join the Taliban, do violent stuff for clout. Anybody who's been in a small town in America, who's hung out at a bar on a Friday night, what do the angry alphas do when they have no bitches? They fight in the bar. They fight other people. They fight outside the bar. Anyone who's worked security in a bar, that's another job I had at one point, in some violent type places where fights happen all the time, know that guys with no bitches get into fights a lot, right? They're the ones that are usually starting the fights. Now, granted, there's the guy with the girl who's, mate protecting his girl, and he gets into fights too, but he's usually getting into fights with other guys who have no women, who are kind of trying, intimidating him, or he feels intimidated by those guys. So this is part of our tribal, chimpanzee brained human tendencies with how mating shows up in the world. Anyone who's a evolutionary psychologist who studies these things knows what I'm talking about. The rest of you normies out there who've never heard my channel before are like, what the hell is he talking about? Right. And so people will deny the sexual component. But I do think there is a sexual component that guys without healthy options, and it's not just sex, but it's healthy relationships with real people. What happens is they escape to the internet. Now, most of the time it's harmless. Like most of your average incel type guy isn't going to hurt anybody. He's just consuming way too much pornography as a coping mechanism. Maybe he simps for a few girls online, and that's where it ends. But some guys with severe mental issues can go down this pathway of being radicalized. Their real life gets replaced by an internet life. And here's the thing about internet life. It's sociopathic. We don't have the evolved mechanisms let me get out of this here so I can talk to you, look at you. All right. We don't have the evolved mechanisms to have to not dehumanize in a way somebody on the other side of a screen. Just look at Twitter arguments and discussions. You would never talk that way to a person in front of your face. You'd be worried that they would either try to kick your ass, force you to kick their ass, or everyone would look at you like you're just a terrible person. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't talk the way that you talk to people in person and the way that you talk to them online, for most of you. For some of you old ass, Gen Xers like me, you grew up without the internet. So you more easily can see sometimes the person on the other end of the screen. I try to remember that there's a human being there. I have to remind myself, though, because my evolved animal mechanisms is to perceive social relationships with face-to-face contact, not face-to-screen to face contact. So we dehumanize who we're talking to and who we're dealing with through a screen. This makes it very easy for all these people to celebrate a murder of a guy who has just had different beliefs than them, a guy with a family, a guy who was supposedly a good guy who just liked to argue with college kids about politics. He opened up discussions, had debates, and he got killed for it. And then there's people out there on TikTok celebrating and saying absolutely sociopathic, psychopathic shit that I would hope they wouldn't want to do that in front of somebody. But some of those people will, because some of those people have replaced their reality with the internet and the simulation of life that happens there. And so guys without healthy relationships do that. They become radicalized, whether it's liberal, whether it's leftist, transgender murder cult, or racist or conservative, or, pick any target group to hate. It's very easy to demonize a target group on the internet and then hate everybody. Hate the Jews, hate the Muslims, hate, people that aren't your same race, hate an entire gender of people. It's very easy to do that when you're not dealing with the human being in front of you. Most people who are somewhat not mentally ill can at least separate the internet from real life enough to not just do violent, horrible shit to people in real life and think that it's real because the internet is real to them, right? But you have a subset of people who will do violent, horrible shit because they've replaced their reality with a sociopathic, internet-brained way of thinking. So his personal relationships, whether he's a full-on incel, I think he was an incel coping with online fantasies and fetishizing and whatever, and possibly ended up in a relationship stemming from that, which nobody is being clear about because everybody wants to politicize that relationship. Well, it was a trans man transition, or man transitioning to be a woman. So we could say he was a violent transgendered ideology guy, right? Or maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know. What if he was in a relationship with a woman, right? Would that matter? I don't know. But I would guess, my hypothesis is that this dude had gotten into these weird online relationships that aren't real. And that was one of them that developed into person-to-person contact of some sort. But it's not clear, those details, because the FBI is lying about them. And why are they lying about it? Goes back, to that question, right? So this is like, FBI reportedly attempt to hide the identity of Charlie Kirk's assassination suspect's transgender boyfriend. By the way, I know the guy's name. I don't mention it because these people that do these things, part of their motivation is notoriety. They want their name plastered on the media. So I try not to participate and mention the dude's name. To me, he's a nobody, psychotic fuck that needs to be dealt with accordingly. If he's indeed the shooter, even, I'm assuming he is, but I don't understand these questions. Okay. And why is his relationship being concealed? Why do we not have more details about some of these things? His family turned him in. Well, okay, what led to that? You know what I mean? There's so much of the story not being proposed here. So, what's the profile of this guy? My guess is that he is a internet brain psychotic individual who had poor social relationships, basically a functioning incel that converted into not being an incel through the internet in some way, shape, or form, right? And in his coping mechanism was to get with a guy who's dresses like a woman and is trying to be a woman, which is not exactly the same as like your typical gay relationship where two men are in a gay relationship and not attracted to women. That's very different. Okay, going with a guy that's trying to look like a woman apparently and then surgically change themselves into a woman. It's very different than being in a homosexual relationship. You see what I'm saying? But it's not like, why is that relevant? It points to his lack of socialization that leads to these sorts of things with certain fringe elements. Okay. And we need to be able to talk about that without politicizing it. We need to be able to talk about this without making it about being against or for transgender stuff, or being against or for LGBTQ, or being against or for Democrats or Republicans. But the media and law enforcement doesn't want to do that. You see, they want to, and I say law enforcement, I'm referring to the FBI, which is an arm of the federal government. And they don't want to do that. They don't want to tell us the facts and let you sort out what might be the theory. They want to tell the story and then present the facts to support the story, which means whether or not this Charlie Kirk assassination was a total conspiracy theory, somehow cabal led event, or whether it was a lone shooter who had a fucked up idea and got away with it, whatever the story is, everybody wants to present to you a narrative about the story that fits their ideology. And that's why you don't get the facts. That's why you're not getting information. You're not getting the truth, because they're only going to present the information that supports the narrative that they feel they want to present. That is where we're at now. So you, as a person sitting on the other side of the screen, you have to recognize that. That doesn't mean go into crazy conspiracy theories without evidence, but it does mean that you need to use your critical thinking, put your critical thinking cap on, so to speak. When you look at this stuff, ask yourself, what's the narrative? What's the agenda? You know what I mean? And try to sort through all of the information and the counter information. Now, I'm going to go into some chats here, see what you guys got. All right. Okay. What's good? Not much, man. I'm looking forward to going back to helping guys have better relationships and inner game and getting off this topic. That's for sure. Yeah, well, and that's what he claimed to be. The guy claimed to be a decoy. That was his statement to the cops, dude. The old guy that was first caught claimed to be a decoy to the police. So where's that? Okay. Juan, you're the man. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm trying to stay transparent and objective. It's very difficult when you're internet brained, which is not me. Hopefully, I fight hard against it. Hopefully, not you guys, but very difficult for internet brained people to step outside of their tribalist tendencies. It's our instinct to be in a tribe and to be in a side and to support our tribe, regardless of the facts and the evidence. Do you see what I'm saying? You have to have frame in your life. It starts with stepping outside of that instinctual tendency, right? Challenging your own beliefs. You have to do that. Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? The scope being too far out, right? FBI is pulling some. BS. Hopefully you guys were able to see the screen eventually. Um, did you guys see? See, that's weird. Did you guys see the videos that I don't know. Did you guys see the video of the dude hopping off the roof? That sucks. I love tech problems. Thank you, StreamYard, for fucking me over again. Um, okay, we see it now. All right, cool. So yeah, like what the fuck, right? All right, so we're gonna go back to it's not that difficult to share a screen, so why would it even do that? And it's not me, it's not user error. It's these guys are fucking retarded. Okay, so back to well, okay, I'm a little retarded, to be fair, but not. Um, okay, let's watch this. Did you guys see this video? Am I sharing it now? Okay, so did you guys see this one? All right, with him coming off the roof. Here's him. Show one more time. Right. Let's do this bigger screen. Here's him coming off the roof, the bag, no rifle, hopping down, landing on both feet. Looks like he hurt his leg a bit, running. I don't see a rifle. I see a bag. I see a lot of things, no rifle. So that was the main thing to look at. Sprinting across the parking lot, no rifle in hand. So that is the question there. What is going on with that? Right. So hopefully you guys caught that one. And then, of course, the photos of him not having a rifle. See, and now it's screwed up again. What is going on? Why does it look screwed up to me again? I just stopped. I just stopped sharing, and now it's like, what is going on with that, dude? Anyway, hopefully, does your screen look fucked up right now? Do you see me normally? Because I look messed up to me. So for some reason, when I share that, what's going on there? All right, so I'm trying to see. Okay, I think I'm okay, I guess. If I look weird, tell me. I think I'm all right. It's normal. Cool. Yeah, you wish you could see what I see. It looks like super weird. Like it looks like you can't see my image now. I don't know why it's doing that. Of course it does that, right? On a stream where I'm trying to present evidence to you guys. Anyway, all right, so we got that in. Yeah, makes you wonder about history if you can see this comment. Can't even figure out what happened 2 days ago for sure, let alone 2000. It's true. Well, this is what we wait for is we wait for lots of different evidence to come out and we look for converging evidence to lead to a conclusion. That's the idea, right? All right, we got some references to Afghanistan deployment. Yep. And referencing, confirming. A lot of guys go on deployments. You get into gunfights or get shot at and you don't return fire. Or sometimes you get in a gunfight, you return fire. But it's not like it happens thousands and thousands of times. You know what I mean? So it's not a good data. Just being in the military by itself is not enough to really say you're an expert. I'm not more of an expert than a medical examiner who's trained in forensics necessarily, right? When we look at things like wounds and stuff like that. I just have enough working knowledge when it comes to weaponry, setting up a hit, we'll put it like that, because that's kind of like what missions are in a military sense, as well as understanding what the capabilities of weaponry, and then having worked for a medical examiner, been to enough crime scenes to see how many different things can happen to the human body, right? Um, and so, yeah. So a lot of you guys are questioning the same thing. Do you guys got any questions of me? Right. So doesn't look like it. So that's it. That is, you guys are being lied to. There's no question. Some of the other things about being signaled, that's doesn't really hold up necessarily. Was there a signal to shoot? Where is there another shooter? You'd have to coordinate, the sound. Oh, and that's some other things about it too. Here's the thing on sound. Okay. So there's a couple things. The bullet is moving faster than the speed of sound, usually, right? When coming out of a rifle, that's going to distort the way that sounds, especially on an iPhone or a Samsung, whatever, the audio on your phone and even most audio equipment is going to distort what that shot actually sounds like. So in person, you can tell a distinction between, let's say, a 30-06 and a 5.56, right? You can tell a difference of what those two might sound like. You might not be able to tell. It's going to be very distorted when we hear video of that. So you can't think, well, that doesn't sound like one of those rifles on video. It's not going to, because the sound is going to get distorted with your phone. You're not hearing it directly. You're picking it up on an audio device that's not designed to pick up on the nuances. Now, really professional audio equipment that's designed to detect these things might pick it up. But then they also run into, where are you placed when the shooting happens? Because the shot fires, the sound follows, and the sound follows and reverbs off of things. So you're going to be distorted depending on where you're at. This is why sometimes people will hear multiple shots when it's really just an echo. You see what I mean? Like, there's all kinds of distortions with audio. So that's not reliable when people say they heard this, they heard that. And they have, when you listen to the footage as well, not reliable. So that's a point that needs to be made. Another point is, you're not going to see around. I've heard people seeing, well, it looks like a round came from here. Look, your iPhone or the phone, or even the video, if there's higher tech video equipment being used, does not have the frames per second when it films to capture something fast moving like a rifle round. You have to have special video equipment that has so many hundreds of frames per second to be able to catch that and film. So when you see that, like, footage and maybe a documentary or something where they slow down and they can see a bullet, right? They're using a special types of cameras that move very fast frames per second. Your camera's on site for this incident, and most of the time, if there's a camera to catch an assassination, will not pick up on that stuff. All right, most of the time. Not all, like I said, there's some camera equipment it can, but your average phone certainly is not. And I don't know that there was any camera filming at the time that could pick up frames per second of fast moving round. So if you're hearing, well, this is a picture of the round or so, it's probably just a distortion from the picture, possibly a smudge or whatever, or, you know what I mean? It could be a number of things. It's not the round moving, most likely being caught on camera. So that's some of that. All right. And then another thing to mention. Okay, so we have concealing of this. We have the story about this weapon that doesn't make sense. We have the background of the shooter that's being concealed, such as his transgender partner and the nature of that relationship, and the nature of his social relationships. What online forums was he on? Where was he? You know what I mean? This stuff is being concealed. Now, maybe it's being concealed to protect an investigation. Maybe, I'm going to guess, more people knew about or were suspicious of this event. There's stories I'm hearing about certain internet sites and Instagrams where they're extremist in their ideology, okay, being taken down and scrubbed by the owners after the incident, as if to conceal evidence and have something blow back on them. So I'm going to guess there was talk on certain areas of the internet about this assassination going down, and that's what they're investigating. So we're not hearing these details about his internet activity, his personal relationships. All that stuff is being concealed, probably for the reason of investigation, I hope, but I don't know, because why? Why is the rifle, where are all these unanswered questions? The FBI has a lot of questions to answer, and I'm not satisfied, and nor should you be, with the current story. Here's the thing. The story may never be accurately told. That's the other thing. A lot of times, and especially if it is a cover up, they're not going to tell you the real story. You know what I mean? You're not going to hear it. This is going to, they're going to put out a thing with all these holes in the story, and everybody's going to forget about it and it'll blow over. All right. And we're seeing that throughout history, and it's only gotten worse, and it's only going to get worse with technology and AI and the ability to fabricate evidence. Now it's like we're going to get into a territory that's very dangerous where you're not going to know what's up or down, which is why it comes back. If you're a man, particularly, but I'd say men or women in this case, you're navigating the world and trying to create a great life for yourself. You have to insulate yourself from all this bullshit because it's only going to get worse. The lies, the deception, the presenting of an alternate reality, all these things, they're only going to get worse. Do you know what I mean? I'll give you an example. I'm not like this liberal guy. I'm pretty independent, but really conservative leaning. I talk to liberals all the time. Nobody tries to kill anybody. It's usually fine. But the internet would have you believe that everybody with certain left-leaning ideology is crazy and all this stuff. You know what I mean? That's some of that stuff. And then, of course, anybody who is conservative, a Trumper, whatever, they're going to kill you too. Everybody's going to kill each other. We're going into civil war, all this stuff. When two people talk to each other like normal people, even when they disagree, and even if they yell at each other, get heated, 90% of the time, nobody kills each other. 99% of the time, nobody kills each other. And you can even be friends after that conversation and be cool with that person, even if you think they're a fucking nut and you don't agree with them. That's the thing. You have to have real relationships with people, guys. You have to have personal relationships. If you have a disagreement with somebody online, give them a call. Shoot them a message, dude. Hey, man, like we're getting a little out of hand. Maybe let's just talk. Let's talk over the phone. If it's somebody you know and you care about as a friend. If you have a platform like mine, you just tend to ignore it because those people can't be reasoned with because they're internet brained, right? But if it's somebody that's personal in your life, just talk to them. Doesn't always work. Maybe the friendship doesn't last. Maybe you have to distance yourself from a family member because they're too internet brained and crazy to recognize your humanness in these conversations. That may be the case, but you have to lead your life in such a way where you insulate yourself from all this stuff because you're just being lied to constantly. The FBI is lying across the board on this. We just don't know why. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that there's necessarily a conspiracy behind it. This guy could be the shooter, but where there's more evidence, there's things being concealed, things being lied about. And that's the lesson here. And I get tired. It's not my wheelhouse to talk about this stuff, but I get tired of watching all the bullshit and everyone thinking they know stuff when they don't. And then it's like, you know what I mean? And then you have to like either bite your tongue or you want to say something and then you say something and you end up down a rabbit hole and it's just crazy, right? And it's been only getting worse, particularly since COVID. Just narrative after narrative and lie after lie to support the narrative. And it doesn't matter what side you're on, they are all doing it right now. I mean, I would say the left is doing it a lot more. That's what I'm seeing, but maybe that's my bias. Maybe that's not correct. I don't know. But I do see, I mean, again, where's the Epstein file, right? Democrats aren't in charge right now. So, okay. You know what I mean? It don't pretend like they're not all telling a narrative or story. Don't think that your favorite person, you could like a person who's in office. For example, you could like Trump, but still understand that some things that are going to come out of that administration are going to be untrue. It's just the way it is. And you need to know that. That's your red pilling for the day. Okay. And you need to make conscious decisions of how you want to live your life. And you got to make the conscious decision to separate yourself from the shit, to not get internet brained, so you can have good relationships, good families, good friendships, all of those things. All right. That's pretty much my concluding statement. And I think that we can probably end it here. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm doing this every Wednesday at noon, but hopefully it'll be back to the regularly scheduled program of giving you tools and tricks and tips to help your inner game and your outer game, and using some, stories and examples to help you with that on these live streams. That's my intent, right? I don't intend to get into the political space, but I can't sit back and stomach all of the bullshit and just not say anything. After a point, it's like, good Lord, you know what I mean? I have to say something. And so as far as the story comes out, we'll see what happens. On a larger scale, if you're a man particularly, and I'm saying this not because I want to ostracize women, it's just that my coaching platform tends to be to help men out, right? I do have a few female clients, however, but that's my audience. So don't be offended by that. If you're new here and you're a woman, don't be upset. Okay. It's just my audience tends to be guys. All right. And I help guys do better. Okay. Go get in my school community so you can start talking with other guys and myself who are trying to do better, who are doing better, who are succeeding at it, and get away from all this bullshit. You know what I'm saying? All right. That's my advice to you. All right, guys. Till next time, Wednesdays at noon. See you then.